Bente Scheller is the director of the Middle East office at the Heinrich Böll Foundation. She joins us now live from Berlin. Thanks so much for joining us. We talk about these rebels as if they're one group working in unison against the regime, which is not the case at all. So how easy has it been for the regime to divide and conquer, given the divisions among these rebel factions?
Well, given the amount of support the Syrian regime has had in this operation, it is actually astonishing how long the divided rebels have managed to keep their positions. So I think that even though they might be divided, it was very clear this is such an important place that they have to remain united enough to hold it. But they are ill-equipped. They haven't had any provisions over the past months. The city is besieged, and this is, of course, something that's weakening them, apart from the fact that many went to the north to fight against ISIS, and this leaves the rebels inside eastern Aleppo in a weaker position.
And whom do you blame for that?
Well, we heard especially of people going to the north to fight ISIS because they were paid for that. Nobody wanted really to support rebels that were fighting against Assad. Well, they got a lot of support for that, so that weakened the opposition. And of course, the fact that neither Russia nor the Syrian regime have taken measures against ISIS. It's mainly the rebels who on the ground have made progress against them, but to fight ISIS and the Syrian regime at the same time is, of course, a major task, and especially if you are not very strongly equipped.
But I'm just trying to discern who these rebels really are. I mean, it seems that they could be actually their own worst enemies because, for example, now you have the YPG attacking rebels to the west of Aleppo. So even though they all do have a common enemy, they can't seem to fight in a common interest.
Well, but the PYD, the Kurds, have mostly been siding with the regime. They are not really rebels. We have not seen them in any occasion fighting against the regime, so I would not lump them all together. You have Kurdish forces that were on the side of the opposition, but these are not the big ones. The PYD has always been fighting along with the regime.
Okay, then let me ask you if you feel the regime is actually on the verge of retaking Aleppo now, as some are saying, and if it does, will it signify that the regime is indeed winning?
The problem for the regime is that by now they might have the military strength to take Aleppo because they have major support. They have tens of thousands of foreign fighters going along with them to fight this battle. So they might win this battle, and we see them really progressing. So I think it is quite a clear case for Aleppo. The problem, however, is how are they going to control that? Because from their own strength, they are unable to do that. And we have seen that in other places as well. So mainly the question is what comes next? And I'm not very hopeful that this will bring any settlement, any peace.
And how much do all of these developments then, these latest ones, complicate the efforts to protect and care for the civilians that are at risk?
The civilians really are left out in the cold because there are no safe areas where they could go to. We heard about the 10,000 who fled Aleppo, but they don't have a safe space to go. So as long as there are no safe zones, as long as there is no area in which they can be sure there is no bombardment, and it will also not come after a few weeks, it's terrible for civilians. Most of them anyway, most of those who were in East Aleppo remain trapped there, and they are without any health care because of the deliberate destruction of the whole health infrastructure by the Russian and Syrian Air Force before. So really, we have to look what to do for them. So far, they have not obtained any humanitarian aid.
I do have another minute with you, so I'd like you to elaborate a little further on what you think the anti-Assad foreign powers will do if the regime does indeed retake the city of Aleppo.
Well, in recent months, we have seen less and less support coming for them. We see the US being engaged in their own domestic politics and looking what will be the next step for them. Syria is definitely not high on the priority list. I think there are also arrangements between other powers in the area. And of course, for me, the most interesting point to look at maybe would be what is Turkey going to do? A few days ago, Turkish soldiers were killed by the regime in Syria. We also see the Kurdish forces together with the regime trying to push hard to retake Al-Bab, which is essential for Turkish interests. So I'm really wondering what might be the Turkish reaction. From the Gulf states also recently, we haven't seen much of support for the rebels. I think they might be waiting it out to see what the next US presidency might do.
Okay, Bente Scheller joining us there from Berlin. Thanks so much for your insight.